to talk about rest. Why take a rest? Why is it so important to incorporate rest breaks? And I'm not talking about the time before you do something, like the time you are taking while you procrastinate. I'm talking about deep and deliberate breaks, complete disconnectivity from your work. So with me, as always, we have Associate Professor Brian Dewsbury from Biological Sciences at the University of Rhode Island and Assistant Dean Fonts, Michelle Fonts. You get a first name too. Dean of Diversity, Recruitment, and Retention in the College of the Environment and Life Sciences. And I'm Assistant Professor Janelle Corrett. So we're going to talk about rest and how to incorporate that into your practice of going to college and taking your courses and things like that. And I think it's timely because this is a holiday week. So if there was ever built-in time to take a break this semester, this would be it. So I'm curious because I'm very bad at this. So I kind of feel guilty making this a course hack when I don't take the rest that I need often. So how do y'all incorporate rest into your work practice, and how do you make yourself take those breaks?
Michelle.
I struggle with that. I'm not gonna lie, right? I do think that because of COVID, it has been easier, but typically I don't, because I'm able to, I sleep in until I wake up and then I go until I'm done, right? So this is an unusual circumstance, but
Is it really sleeping in if you're waking up like?
Well, what I mean by that is I don't have to get up at 7:20 to get ready to be at work at 8:30. That's all I mean, right? So for that, I mean, that gives me a little bit of extra time and space to get a little bit more rest. But when I'm talking to students about this thing, well, I can't really rest in the way that I should because I have so many things to do. And I say, no, there has to be a balance, because if you try to plug it all in and get very little rest, your energy is low and you're not getting as much done anyway. You're just not, and you're not retaining well either, right? So I've talked a lot to students recently about balance of both, right? You have to schedule your life as much as people don't want to. There's the young man, Brian, that you had me talk to recently. He was talking to me and he's like, I know I'm supposed to, but I don't. And I say, I know this is a hard habit for all of us, right? To schedule ourselves out, but you don't just put in your schedule when you have a meeting or a class. Put in schedule for yourself to get things done. And then work in that capacity. If it has to go beyond that, you can, but then take a break. Go take a walk, rest your mind, breathe, right? So I'm trying to give small, easy exercises for students to think about. And then when they tell me that they only sleep 3 and 4 hours a day, I'm trying to explain to them that if you don't, it's going to catch up and you're not going to retain and you're not going to do as well in your work anyway. So cramming it does not make you you do mediocre work if you're not rested well. You just do. So that's one of the things. Yeah.
Well, one thing you brought up, like the walks, Michelle, I think that's a great idea because sometimes, I mean, a lot of students don't get a lot of sleep. I'm one of those people that I absolutely need sleep, but I'm thinking that rest is something I'm considering separately from sleep. Like you need good sleep habits. That's for normal functioning, just like you would need to eat. But rest to me is like awake periods when you're not working or thinking about work, right? So it's more than just getting your 8 hours, or in my case, I need at least 9.5 to be honest. But I also need times when I'm completely not checking my email, not checking my phone, just resting, doing the other things, going for walks, doing my hobbies. I have actual hobbies, I swear. So doing those things they help me be more creative. They help me write. They help me focus when I'm back in work. And I think that's important, that it's not just getting more than 4 hours of sleep, obviously would be healthy, but building in rest times where you're not working, I think is important too.
Yeah, I agree, and I'll make 2 points here. Try to be brief about it. And for the first point, I'm kind of going to conflate rest and sleep a little bit, just in the sense that as it pertains to um, how it affects you cognitively. One of the things that Michelle mentioned about, you don't sleep as much, but then you're tired and you're not as good as what you're going to do anyway. One key piece to that, Michelle, though, in the studies that I've read on this, is that people still think they are just as good. So that's the thing. It's like you actually believe that you are just. It's kind of like multitasking. People talk about multitasking, and they're definitively shown that you cannot. They think you can't check email and read like you can, but you can fool yourself into thinking. And I think that illusion has driven a lot of bad habits and bad practice, not just in students but in adults. Um, and I think one key point here, Nell, and this conversation reminds me of the book you share with me and I read and I love and I've shared with everybody in the world, Slow Professor, because I think the principles are very applicable here as well. And maybe because you know my styles, it behooves me to not just speak about this as, okay, here's some tips, but I think there's some context here. Um, I am just this week I was speaking to students in my intro bio class just casually and talking about rest and sleep. So this is kind of serendipitous. And you need to get some amount of sleep and take some time off. And one student said, "Yeah, but I'm a science major." Right? So there is this concept that because you are in this particular discipline or this particular field,
You get no sleep.
you must always, not just no sleep, but to Nell's point, you must always be on, right? And I think we can't just talk about get rest and disconnect and unplug without addressing the broader burnout culture that, quite frankly, I think gets cultivated from the undergraduate level and follows us all the way until we are professors and doctors. And there's a little bit of a pride, or I only slept 2 hours, or was working on this for 14 straight hours. And honestly, now, to be fair, some students look around and they feel like they see evidence, right? They see the students who are having A's and they say, well, this person, as far as I know, guns it 24/7. Maybe that's what I need to be doing in order to be successful. So
yeah, I'm sensitive to that too, Brian. Just that point about burnout. It was last year this time when I felt like I was experiencing clinical burnout, like really it almost, I don't know if it's an official medical diagnosis, but I was so burnt out.
It's not.
And, there are real symptoms to that. And you cannot function long-term with
Right.
that mentality. So something's got to give.
Well, just to maybe circle back to your point about the unplugging piece, I think that's the key here, because in order to really unplug, you have to find value in not being engaged in the thing that leads to burnout, right? So you may very much love science and very much love to learn the material and do experiments, right? But you also need to love, like, being with a significant other, being with your pets, reading a non-science book, like going for a walk and exercising, right? Like being in love with those things and have those things bring you joy and satisfaction and fulfillment. Because my fear sometimes now is without explicitly thinking about those other activities in that way, then you feel that the only fulfillment you can get is from the STEM work, thus leading you to never unplug. Right?
And the work that you might be in love with in the sciences you don't particularly love anymore because it's taking over. And it's a hard concept to teach, especially because of the things you highlighted, Brian, right? The culture that you see is what you think is the right thing. And if that is what's being taught in this culture, is if you're in the sciences, you don't get to unplug. This is your life. And some of our professors really tell me, look to your left, look to your right. If you're not in it to win it, then.
Well, let me ask. I mean,
this is hard. This is a hard truth to face.
It is hard. Well, since we are doing course hacks, maybe each of us can give 3 examples. I'm only asking for 3 examples of things that each of us do to unplug. All right, I'll go first to give you all some time to think.
Is this like a who's cooler?
No, we know you win that every time. So
my hobbies are pretty boring.
No, but it doesn't have to be hobbies. It's just, it could be like you literally do nothing, right? You sit and look at your backyard. So for me, yeah, I I love listening to music. Um, just go for a walk and just listen to music for like 45 minutes. It's a very peaceful thing to do. Number one. Number two, I do like to watch like Netflix shows that don't make me, that doesn't lead to intellectual conversations that I just enjoy. And then number three, I am an avid football fan, and by football I mean international football, like soccer football. So I am obsessed. I have fantasy teams. I follow Chelsea. I watch almost every game I can, and I watch football. Whether it's England, Mexico, Spain. I love football, but it's a nice zone to be in. So those are mine.
Yeah, I like that they're all kind of not intellectual activities. So it gives you a real break.
Yeah,
That's cool.
yeah.
Yeah.
All
Michelle,
right, you or me? I got mine. You ready?
you go ahead first.
Okay. I think one that I'm not going to lie to you, I struggle with the most is stopping social media and computer time, like shutting down from that. I'm really trying to be better at that because even when it's not about work, there's always something you can be doing on social media and on your computer, right? So unplugging from that, I'm really trying to stretch myself by saying from 10 to 10, I'm sorry, not 10 to 10, 8 to 8 to stopping that, right? Because I end up going later usually at night, but really trying my best to shut down because there were times like I'd be in bed and still scrolling. Like I need to stop that, right? So that's one that I really recommend for us all to try to do to just disconnect from that. I will agree with Brian on the music thing. I really go to music or quality time with people, like my friends, even if it's virtual, even if it's on the phone. I need those connections and communications with my people. And that's separate from the work and stepping away from that. And then the last thing I have to agree, TV time. That I spend with my partner. We just lounge and chill and do that with each other and spend quality time in that way. So those are the three things that I think I practice most frequently.
Mm. Well, so like I said, I struggle with taking real rest breaks because, and I think a lot of students are in this situation too, because I'm raising little kids. And Brian, I know you're in this case too. When I'm not working, a lot of times I'm with them. And
Mhm.
so it's a different kind of work. So it does give me a break from work. But everyone's, balancing. You may be taking care of parents or siblings, or, you may have another job. And
Mhm.
so fitting everything in is tough, and making time for yourself is tough. Um, so I think for me, Michelle, like to your point, I have to talk to my friends. That's to me the most restful thing, is just to be able to reconnect in a very deep way with the people that I love and care about the most in this
So
world.
what you're saying is that you're resting right now because we're
Because you're
talking.
with us.
I love doing course hacks. Yes. It's a rest. It's a real different kind of thing. I mean, I and also I love when my rest is like synergistic to what my mission is. That's
Mm, mm-hmm.
so
Yeah.
so I do try to take breaks from social media, but I also use I like scrolling my Twitter feed because I basically only follow entomologists, and I actually really enjoy all the work that they're doing, and it is very different than my work and my research. So
Can I?
I try to cultivate those interests, but I guess it is also work. I don't know. It's
Yeah,
tough.
I'm not hearing a lot of rest, but I'm just saying, but it's not easy. You're right. You have children. That's a whole different ball game for the both of you. It's hard to balance. But I want to say something before I forget. I know this is about rest and our balance and how we need to look at that, but I have to tell you that recently in the last couple of weeks, and I've been talking to students, a lot of times students tend to get to this week and tap out, like completely tap out of academics, right? Tuesday, right? This is, I'm done. I'm not looking at anything till I get back, and maybe not till Tuesday, right? I hesitate to say, take a complete break. What I tell students on Thursday, that's Thanksgiving. However you celebrate it, if it's two of you in a home, whatever, take that day as a break. No doubt about it. Do whatever makes you happy and thankful that day, but no tapping out of academics completely. Find the balance there as well, because then they come back and they're two times as overwhelmed.
So here's what I suggest, because I agree that I think Tuesday to Tuesday is quite long, but I do think that for me, a real break, like a vacation, it's got to be 3 days. I can't just do a 1 day and then back into it. Doesn't really feel like rest. And
That's not what I was gonna say.
yeah,
What I
so I'm suggesting what you're suggesting too. Not a
Right.
complete break, but limit it. Don't take 7, take 3, you know?
Right, right, exactly. So I said find balance. I want you to still do stuff. If you're somebody that's going to be doing virtual shopping, if you're someone that's whatever it is that you want to do personally, I want you to do. But don't tap out completely, because there are students that are behind in their schoolwork right now. So how do you find a balance of resting, enjoying your family? I don't want you to tap out for a week. I want you to tap out, but you got to make sure you're getting the things done that you have due next week,
Yeah.
because some of them have projects and tests next week when they get back. So it's finding the
Yeah.
balance.
It also helps to do, and I'm sure, Brian, you have this too, where you make a plan before you take your rest. So you're not just mentally forgetting everything. You have a plan for when you come back so that you can take a real break, knowing that you already have your plan for when you're going to check back in.
Right.
So you don't have to check back in and then be like, what's happening? What are my things? Oh my gosh, everything's due right now. And then what's
Mhm.
the point? You're stressed out again. So for
Right.
me, on Wednesday, last thing before I wrap up work, I'm going to have my plan. I'm going to set aside an hour before I really, really am like, I'm done for the day, and make a plan for when I come back, on Monday, and say, okay, now what's the plan for the week? So I'm covered. Because otherwise, I cannot rest if I
Mhm.
feel that anxiety of like, I have no idea what's coming up next week.
Right.
I need to know kind of what's going to go on, and I externalize that into a plan and a schedule. And to me, that's really key. Putting it down on paper, either on a calendar or a list, once it's externalized, I can relieve that mental pressure. I don't have to think about it anymore. It's written down. I don't have to remember it. And so that's so key for me. And I'm that kind of, I like to specialize and think about, like, I do have trouble taking rests because, and I think we should acknowledge this, not everybody's the same kind of thinker. I focus on, like, I can hyper focus on my research and then I don't really want to think about anything else. And so it's really hard to take breaks. But if I do this thing where I write it down and I externalize it, it's like, oh, I can take a break from it. I don't have to think about it now. It's not going to go away. It's written down somewhere, so that helps.
Yeah, and for some people, which I think was brought up in an earlier episode, you're right. Everybody's a little bit different. So for some people, just the thought of planning stresses them out, and so you have to kind of figure out what your way is. I also want to acknowledge here that a lot of what we are discussing as potential rest options or things to do it comes from a place of some privilege. You did acknowledge, Nell, that people who like yourself, myself, who have young kids, when you're not doing work for your paycheck, you're putting kids to bed, you're managing a firestorm or whatever. But then there are students that we all teach or we all advise who, for a variety of reasons, their home life doesn't allow the ease of access to the kinds of rest strategies that we just mentioned. So I just want to acknowledge that that's a real thing. But I will still say, I mean, Michelle, you and I have had a lot of conversations with students like this, is that, a key part of navigating some of this noise, so to speak, is still finding times to rest. And by rest, I don't mean, okay, maybe it's not 2 hours and listening to music, but even if it's 10 minutes, right? Even if it's, okay, I recognize that I am more restful when I'm in Michelle's office or Brian's office versus when I'm at home, right? That's still rest, right? That's
Right.
still something you have to actively identify as what is rest, what is appropriate rest in your context.
Yeah, I think the
You
key
share
is
with
that
hours, but
it's deliberate,
right.
that you are planning it, you're acknowledging it, and you're creating space,
Mhm.
mental space for it. It's going to look very different for other people. But yeah, if you are, you know, a social person and rest for you is socializing, gosh,
Mhm.
this pandemic is tough. Like, let's acknowledge that, right? if you rest and recover by going to parties, this is a tough time for you. And so, yeah, you got to make
that.
space for that.
I don't like it.
Michelle, I figured that was you, but I didn't want to say it.
Well, Rhode Island just announced 812 new cases. So yeah, we yeah.
Yeah. So, and then also this is Thanksgiving week and not everyone enjoys that reunion with the family, right? Different families have different situations. So it might be really restful or it might be really stressful. So creating time for yourself in whatever way that you can in a deliberate way, that's the important thing, I think. So Brian, I think that's a really good point that, I think it different situations are more privileged than others, but it's about loving yourself and kind of setting yourself up for success and realizing that rest, this is the quote that I sent you guys before this. I don't remember it exactly, but like rest is not working against productivity. It's the partner of productivity, a partner of work. So rest and work have to go together because learning is so hard on your brain, right? It's so taxing. So you got to, give yourself that love, that break that you need to do it well.
Yes.
Okay. Any other last points?
Well, I guess I mean, just say thanks, Mel, for bringing this topic up. I think it was a good time for it. We wanted to wish you happy Thanksgiving or however you celebrate the next few days. And we wanted to talk about rest because this is a time where you can unplug, where you can get some more sleep and get to perhaps think about how you can disconnect a bit and really enjoy other aspects of life. And as you do so, please be safe. But we will be here next week when you come back, and hopefully us as well rested.
I love it.
That's right. There's homework. There's homework this week.
And if you choose to follow my lead and watch soccer as a rest option, just remember one word: Chelsea.
Oh goodness. All right, y'all. I want both of you to be safe and have a happy holiday, unplug and rest as well. We will reconnect next week, and just take care.